which is fantastic because we have another lined up. Jeff Zupan from One Identity is now going to take the stage, join us here to talk about the history and evolution of privileged access management. Jeff Zupan.
All right, that's going to be a tough act to follow. Yeah, my name is Jeff Zupan. I'm the Director of Product Security for One Identity. Quick 5-second plug. We are a company that makes a bunch of identity and access management products. Come out and see us at the booth, drive the race car, have some fun. So I am the Director of Product Security, but I have a long history in PAM. Was actually there from day one when this actually became a product in the marketplace. So to get started, I'm sure you all know this, but just to get us off started properly, privileged access management is the tools and techniques that are required to protect your most privileged accounts, the accounts that everyone is trying to steal. There's some certain things that have to be accomplished by a tool that does this. You have to secure and control access to your privileged accounts. You have to ensure individual accountability, make sure that you know who is doing what with privilege, and you have to have an indelible audit trail. Whatever they're doing, it has to be recorded, it has to be immutable, it can't be changed, and this is all required to ensure compliance with regulations. There's really two different types of privileged accounts. The first one that you think about is your account that we call them human accounts. So your account within Active Directory that has privileges that can span all across your Active Directory. Lots of privilege, but there's another special type of account. Those are the non-human accounts, or the shared privileged accounts. Every system out there, whether it's Unix or Linux, has a root account. Windows, the local administrator account, your remote access cards or IPMI cards have an account that has full privileges. And these are accounts that don't belong, they have no face. They don't belong to a human. They have to be shared. There's cases where it is the only account that can be used to perform certain actions, especially in the case of like networking devices. You have to be able to use enable, or at least in the past, you had to be able to use enable to configure a Cisco router. And it's hard to track individual accountability with that because it's a single account that's showing up in the log, and you have to know who's using it to be able to prove to auditors or forensics teams that you understand who had control of that account. So with managing privilege, there's really two things that we have control over. There's scope, and that's both horizontal and vertical. Horizontal scope is how many systems do you have privileged access to. In the case of root on a Unix box, that's a very narrow scope, unless of course you use the same credentials, SSH keys, or passwords across every Unix server in your environment, and then you've increased the scope pretty tremendously. The vertical scope is how much privilege you have. Sometimes that can't be controlled. As we talked about previously, the super users, there's no way to restrict that privilege to a smaller amount. And then the other thing that we can control is time. How long do you have access, and what specific time do you have access? So those are really the only things that we can control with that. So I'm talking about past, present, and future of privileged access management, and doing this within 20 minutes, so forgive me if I leave anything out. Back when I started, you can tell that I've probably been in this industry a little bit, with the gray beard and the increasing forehead. I've been around a while, and when I started back in the mid-'80s, privileged access management was not a very difficult problem to solve. There was very little networking back then. To get privileged access, it usually required physical access to the machine that you were working on. So pretty easy to do, but as I moved forward in my career, by the end of the 90s, I was working for a consumer products company, and I was in charge of technical operations for the whole company. So I was managing database administration, system administration, networking, security, and things began to get more and more connected, and it was getting more attention that we were not doing a very effective job of managing privileged credentials. I was in part of a larger organization, and I had to endure the wrath of the auditors once a year, and they would come in and say, how are you managing your privileged accounts? And every year I had to basically give the same answers, like, we're not doing a very effective job, but there are no third-party products available to solve this solution, and we don't have the time or the resources to do it more effectively. And I really got tired of giving that answer. And just, I don't really like to talk about company names, but the company that I was working for was, you might have heard of it, a company called Kodak. So I was a company that it was a company that Kodak owned. And towards the early 2000s, I thought that maybe they were not looking into digital quite enough. They were very much of the belief that film was never going to go away. So I thought maybe it was a good time for me to start looking for another opportunity. So what ended up happening was there was an opportunity that was presented to me. It turns out it was my brother had started a managed security services provider company, and what they were doing was what they called it was co-managed firewall, IDS, IPS services for high-risk networks. So to do that, what they would do is both the customer and the MSSP would have full administrative access to make configuration changes, to look at the activity that was performed on there. But it had to be tightly controlled, because you had to be able to say who made the change that broke it and brought the network down, whatever. So he was struggling a little bit because he needed tools to help run that business, and he asked me if I would be interested. He said, "Would you be interested in building something that will protect privileged passwords?" It's like, yeah, I'm very interested in doing that, because it's been a problem that I needed to solve for the past several years. So I got started with him, sitting in my basement, working around the clock for several months, and came up with a prototype. And what happened was we happened to go out to a very large bank, top 10, or one of the 10 largest banks in the world, and we were trying to sell them our security service. And we were showing them how we manage things, and happened to show them the privileged password management tool. And they looked at it and said, "We don't want your service, but turn that into a product and we will buy it." And we turned it into a product, and they bought it. And we became the first privileged password management, and created this space. But prior to that, there was not a lot of, the companies that handled things properly were the ones that use a manually managed approach, or the envelopes in the safe. It's actually pretty amazing that even within the last couple of years, I've been talking to customers that are still using passwords in the safe. Anyone out here still writing down passwords? Nope, that's good to hear. Yeah, so it's finally coming around. But yeah, the product that we created was privileged password management, and it was the first product in the market that did full lifecycle management of passwords. So that was taking control of the password for these shared accounts, your root passwords, doing regularly scheduled password changes for those, and then also checking the password to make sure that nothing was happening that could have caused it to change. And what that did was it gave customers the ability to find out if someone was going in through other means and changing those passwords. And then the most important part was the post-use reset. So that if someone needed the root password to be able to do some work on a box, they used it for the period of time that they needed, and then After they were finished, we would immediately go out and reset the password, and that gave us, complete individual accountability. You knew who had access to that shared account at any given time. We also had embedded workflow in there. Someone would request the password. Another person or group of people would have to approve that request. So the data owners were able to take control over who had access to their systems. And very strong segregation of duties. You could not approve your own request, and other segregation of duties inside there. And we built this I had an ops background. So the approach that we took to build this was to build it on hardened appliance. So very, very simple to install, very simple to operate, and very simple to make secure and keep secure for the customers. So what's actually pretty amazing is when we started this, we had a hard time convincing people that it was really a product, that anyone would really care about this. We talked to analysts, and analysts came back to us and said, this isn't a product. It's a niche product. Only highly regulated industries are ever going to be concerned with this. The other thing is, with our MSSP, we had a partner who was had another technology in the security space, secure document storage, and we tried to get them to partner with us to build this password management solution, and they came back and said, we have absolutely no interest. We don't believe passwords are important to anyone. We don't believe it's strategic. A few years later, they went into the they went into the industry, and they are now the largest vendor in that industry. So the second thing that we did is, this was still for our managed security services. Rather than just giving out the password and letting anyone do whatever they wanted to with the password, we thought, wow, it would be really cool if instead we could proxy a session and automatically log them in, so we could give the people the access that they needed to do the work that required privilege, but never give them the credential. And since we were going through a proxy, we were able to record everything that they were doing. So it gave you a full audit trail of what they did. You could completely replay it and see everything that they did. So very, very strong. But this, again, started out as a tool for our MSSP. What was happening in the mid-2000s was a lot of the IDS and IPS systems, which had in the past always been Unix-based, we were able to capture that with privilege delegation and keystroke logging. But they started moving many of those products to Windows during that time. And keystroke logging doesn't work with Windows in a graphical environment. So we needed another solution. We built it, and again, it turned into a product, and it it's now a multi-billion-dollar industry, and yeah, it's unfortunately, we were much better determining what products should be coming out and building products that customers wanted than actually running a business. And for that reason, I'm in Australia this week for work and not for vacation. Yet we did not we did not patent anything, and many other people came into the market. And again, it has turned into a huge market. Come on. All right. So the next 10 to 12 years, the solutions really evolved, both ours and our competitors. Very much a leapfrog approach. We would come out with something new, other people would come out with something new, but all of them were pretty much keeping in pace with each other. Better discovery. You can't manage an account if you don't know that it exists, so we could go out and scan your network, scan your systems, and find the accounts that have privilege, get those inside. More workflow and integration, working with your ticketing systems and making sure that people don't get access to the passwords unless they or the accounts unless they actually need it. And the number of platforms is increasing. Moving out into the web, also taking care of things like DevOps or DevSecOps. So lots of evolution. But on the other side, the challenges have continued to evolve as well. Um, the the skill that people have that are trying to steal your privileged identities or your privileged accounts so that they can steal your data. It's amazing how far it has come. I mean, you can install an entire Kali pen test lab on an Android phone now. Anyone in here have one with them? Yeah, do you? Yeah, it's pretty amazing what they've been able to do to get access to what we've been working so hard to protect. And the other biggest problem is careless or malicious insiders. There's a lot of studies out about the amount of insider threat, but some of it is malicious, but more of it is just carelessness. As we saw in our previous presentation, our social engineering people are getting better and better as well. It's no longer, we don't have to worry about people inside our companies now clicking on the link that says, my uncle died and left $15 million in the bank. Click here and help me get this money out and I'll give you 10%. But the social engineering tricks that they're using now look so real. So it's very, very easy for someone who's even trying to be very responsible with the IT assets in your organizations to get scammed. So, and because of this, it's making us all more reactive than we would like to be in the security world. Just a couple of statistics. I was reading some stuff. There was a study done by University of Maryland last year, and they found that every single device that is connected to the internet, on average, there's a hack attempt every 39 seconds. Every single device on the internet. 54% of the attacks that are successful are due to insider threats. And for those breaches, it takes 87 days, on average, 87 days to discover it and 105 days to fix it. And cumulatively, it's cost over $2 trillion in damage. So what's next? What are the next things that we have to do to solve this? Just managing the password is not enough. You all know that. What we're seeing and what our customers are asking us for, the first thing that we're talking about quite a bit is better identity or better integration with identity governance. Identity governance is really good at managing those accounts that have a face, the individuals that could have more privileges than they need. But because that's being used more and more inside organizations, they want that single pane of glass to be able to control not just the identities with the face, but those accounts that are non-human, the machine accounts or the service accounts. And with that, we have to take a more risk-based approach to privileged access. What I think is the coolest technology that we're working on right now is behavioral analytics and machine learning, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And identity analytics is also important, knowing who has privilege and being able to pull that information from all of your disparate systems, including potentially thousands of SaaS-based solutions that you have out in the cloud, and being able to map that out in one single place and look for areas that are of concern to you, where someone doing peer group analysis, if there's someone that has far more privileges than everyone else in their group, why does that exist? How can I correct that? How can I get in front of that and fix it before it becomes a problem? And then a couple other things. I'm going to run out of time, so a couple other things. Convergence of PAM and the privilege delegation, and also hybrid PAM, where part of it lives on-prem inside your organization, but other things can happen outside in the cloud. And what that does is it allows us to very, very rapidly respond to changes without you having to do updates to your on-prem software. So managing risk, as I said, there's eliminate risk at rest. That's by using the identity analytics and seeing who has privileges that they no longer need or that they've gotten in a manner that they shouldn't have. And then eliminate risk in motion. Risk in motion is the behavioral analytics and being able to respond in real time towards things that you see. So we're doing a lot right now with behavior analytics and because we're proxying you through a session, we have the entire protocol stream going through there. We can see what they're actually doing, and we can we can actually, basically do a digital footprint of what that user typically looks like when they're doing work. And if we see something that's abnormal, if they're normally very slow typist, and all of a sudden we see something that is considerably faster, we can detect that and we can stop it. We can send SMS texts saying, is this really you? Are you doing this? Or send it to the manager and say, are they doing this? Things like being able to detect conditions where you have someone using privilege from Australia and from the United States at the same time. That shouldn't happen. So being able to stop that before the damage is done. So come and talk to us at the booth. With 20 minutes, I'm pretty much out of time. But so just like everything else in security, what we're trying to do, and trying to do more of this within PAM, predict, prevent, detect, and respond, and save your company's data and keep us all employed, right? So that's all I have. Thank you for coming, and look forward to talking to you.
Jeff Zupan, ladies and gentlemen.